as soon as possible.
It is the way in which we propagate our species.
Please demonstrate how this is accomplished.
So, what's next? I don't know.
Hi, and welcome to Casual Trek, a Star Trek recap and ranking podcast. I'm Charlie Etheridge Nunn, a writer and an X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse, specifically on PSP fan.
Hi, and I'm Miles Reed Lobato, science fiction writer and David Lynch's 1984 adaptation of Dune fan, and if my good friend Andrew Worm ever hears this, suck it, Worm. 1984 version of Dune is the best movie adaptation of Dune. Fight me. We've done this before. We will do this again. May your crysknife chip and shatter.
I assume by Worm he is a relative of God Emperor.
No, it's spelled W-U-R-M, but this is a long-standing feud he and I have pretty much now had for close on 18 years.
Wow.
Whether or not the Dune David Lynch movie is any good. He says no, and I say, okay, it is not a great adaptation of Dune. It's a terrible adaptation of Dune. But as a piece of cinema, once you've watched that film, you never forget it. I now have the Toto scored soundtrack on vinyl.
So, does he prefer the sci-fi original version?
He actually prefers I think now he prefers the recent part one of. Like, the thing was, when this film was coming out, we made a pact when I told him I wouldn't believe this Dune movie was ever coming out until he and I were sitting in the cinema together to watch it. And we made good on that promise. We watched it together. The blood oath was fulfilled.
Wow.
Until part 2 comes out. So
yeah. Welcome to Casual Dune. Wait, no, wrong podcast. Yes. Here on God, that'd be horrible.
Casual Dune would be horrible.
Anyway, this is not a Dune podcast. This is a Star Trek podcast. And each episode on this Star Trek podcast, we watch stories from 3 different Star Trek shows or films, and we rate them on a big list of best to worst. We both love Star Trek, and it's far from our first fandom, so this makes us the ultimate objective voices on such a task. And this week, we're playing the synergy game here. We're finally ripping the plaster off. We're going to watch the last Star Trek pilot episode that we haven't covered, just in time for the release of Picard Season 3. Admittedly, a week later because scheduling, but, you know, it's exciting, kind of.
Have we finally sold out in the name of branding and synergy?
Yeah, this is now official Star Trek merch. We are officially part of the road to Picard.
So, Charlie,
Yes.
what non-Star Trek thing have you been consuming this week?
I've been consuming not just this week, but what feels like so long, even though it's only been a recent discovery for me, the video game Vampire Survivors, specifically on the iPad, and it's so much fun. It's kind of like, it's Castlevania themed kind of looking, but it's a reverse shoot 'em up.
Interesting. Is it a kind of a linear platformer like the original Castlevania games, or is it more of a Castlevania Symphony for the Night, open world Super Metroid style game?
Neither. You're a person. Yeah, you're a person who, like, there are a few characters and tons of unlockable ones, and you wander around a top-down kind of map, and bats attack you initially, and you have like your little man who has a Castlevania style whip, just whacking the bats, and then after you get some XP from killing them, you might level up your whip, and now you whip in two directions, left and right, or you get another item like some holy water or a cross or some garlic, keeping monsters away. And it's a really simple game because everything comes at you, and you auto fire all of your weapons all at once. And watching how you level and evolve everything you do, it goes from spending a run of this game which lasts like 5 minutes until you inevitably die at the hands of some giant praying mantis or something, to like I am an explosion of light and color and energy. There are all these things going off around me, and I've unlocked a dog to play and a bird and a tree, which is incredibly slow but radiates a field that destroys monsters around it.
Well, to that I have to quote Treebeard from Lord of the Rings and say, "Hum from." Right. So what non-Star Trek thing have I consumed this week? I am actually at first. I am going to quickly plug something. Back in January, I recorded an episode of the podcast Breakfast in the Ruins, which is a Michael Moorcock flavored podcast. I didn't actually appear on the episode to talk about Michael Moorcock, one of my favorite writers, but instead to talk about the novel The Dark by 70s British schlockmeister James Herbert. Now, if you don't know James Herbert, the best way I can describe him, he's clearly one of the influences on the Garth Marenghi character. A fun time was had, some much dark themed alcohol was consumed, and the episode should be up for release by the time this episode goes out.
Nice.
I felt I had to plug it, and what non-Star Trek thing I have consumed. I have finally made progress in Elden Ring after a year and restarting the game last weekend. I was stuck on Margit the Fell for about a year. I restarted the game thinking, I think I missed something. Got to where I was within about a day, and basically then got stuck again until Friday, when I finally did the several prerequisite 25 years worth of grinding it needs to get enough wounds to basically wail this fucker to death with my sword. So I have made progress, and I'm stuck again.
Oh no, I saw your frustrated Facebook posts about this. Yeah, I tried. I enjoyed Bloodborne out of all the Souls-likes for a bit, and I couldn't hack it. I don't have the memory, the reaction time, or the literal time to get good at it.
The only Souls-like game I've played before this one was Jedi Fallen Order for the PlayStation 4, which I think is a much more fun and easier game than this is. This is insanely difficult. It looks beautiful, but the gameplay is easy, but actually playing the game is a nightmare. I really feel sorry for Rihanna, my wife, because she's been watching me this last week, and she's been sitting on the sofa while I have been trying really hard not to put my controller through the TV, and just going, oh look, I died again, in the same place. What fun! What fun! What larks we are having!
What jolly japes. One day I might go back to Bloodborne, but I'm fine just sticking with Fire Emblem and Vampire Survivors and all of that.
I'm thinking of picking up the remake of Dead Space sometime in the next few weeks. I've heard that's good, but eventually I have to get back to Disco Elysium and, more importantly, Doki-Doki Literature Club.
Yes, yeah. Emma was a massive fan of Doki-Doki Literature Club, and like you, I really need to go back to Disco Elysium. It was very good fun.
Yeah.
It was a bit stressful, some of the choices and some of the decision making, but in a good way.
I need to tell a quick story about my relationship with Doki-Doki Literature Club, because you've seen the photo. I didn't play the game until like last year,
Yeah.
but I have some friends who dress up as the Doki-Doki Literature Club characters
Oh God.
for conventions. And so when I found out that a friend of mine was going to be at the same convention, I said to them, okay, it's November. It's Nano Month. I want to take a photo with you with a sign saying worst NaNoWriMo group ever. And my friend not only delivered, she got all the other people in the group to appear in the photo. So there is a photo out there, which I'll probably put on the Twitter account, which is me holding a sign saying worst NaNoWriMo group ever, while surrounded by 3 of the 4 Doki-Doki Literature Club ladies.
Amazing. Right. I feel we've done a good job in not talking about what we're talking about today. So we're doing our Picard synergy episode, but we're recording it less than 24 hours before the episode airs, which is kicking off season 3. As I believe
Is it
Yeah,
when does it air?
13th, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh damn. Okay, I thought it was like close next weekend. All right.
Alas, our fortnightly schedule means we will be a week afterwards. So, what's great about this?
Premieres. No, it premieres February the 16th.
Oh, yes. Sorry, yeah, not the.
Charlie, time loops were last episode.
Okay. Well, it will have only just been out. Anyway, I figured the audience will have seen the start of season 3. We, at this point in the time stream, have not. So I figured we could have some baseless conjecture. And in fact, this whole episode's choices are themed around baseless conjecture based on the trailer for Picard season 3, as it features a couple of infamous, I guess, Star Trek antagonists who will be popping up and obviously are central parts to this entire show.
Yup. Should I tell them what episodes we are going with?
Please.
Based on sheer conjecture from the trailer, we are featuring episodes featuring Professor James Moriarty, who is more of a Star Trek villain than he really is a Sherlock Holmes villain. But I can go on about my opinions on Moriarty within the wider Sherlockian canon all day. We then have Datalore, featuring Data's twin brother, played by Brent Spiner, who, I don't know about you, Charlie, I think he might be a Ronin.
Just slightly. Hang on, Brent Spiner or Lore?
All of both.
Okay,
And
fair.
then for our main event, we will finally be pulling the Picard plaster off and talking about the pilot episode of Picard Season 1, Remembrance.
Yeah, it had to happen eventually. And why not do it for synergy?
For synergy!
Yes. On that note, we should probably crack on. Going in chronological order here, we have Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 1, Lucky, Episode 13, titled Datalore.
There is no data. No law.
There is lore, there is baseless conjecture, which is the other sibling. But yes, so this aired on the 18th of January 1988. Teleplay by Robert Lewin and someone called Gene Roddenberry? I've not heard of this man before.
No. I'm sure he's a perfectly fine man with no weird sexual hang-ups.
That seems distressingly specific, and yeah, somehow we've not delved into them as much as you'd think in these 14 episodes now. Anyway, so they did the teleplay. The story was by Robert Lewin and Maurice Hurley, of Baywatch Nights fame, and this was directed by Rob Bowman, who is going to be more and more of a name Star Trek wise from this point onwards in TNG history. We have a UK and US #1 hit. We have Belinda Carlisle with Heaven is a Place on Earth from the UK, which is a staple of wedding do's. It does feel like any notable ones from this era is specifically because of that.
Yeah. And then we have George Harrison, the handsome Beetle.
Oh my word, yes. We've got my mind set on you, which yeah, I'd never really followed Harrison's post-Beatles kind of stuff so much and didn't realise this was him.
All I know about Harrison's post-Beatles career is his stint in the best rock band on earth, the Traveling Wilburys, where it's he, Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, and the guy from Jeff Orbison and the guy from ELO.
Wow.
Who is doomed to forever be the guy from ELO.
Oh, good old ELO. Yeah, the video for this had a guy who I was sure was like a really young Alexis Denisov in it. But it couldn't have been because of time, really. It just looked uncannily like him in places. Yeah, compared to a lot of the 80s-ish stuff from this sort of era of Star Trek, they're fine. These are both fine.
It's fine.
Yeah. So, Miles.
It's Ed Sheeran.
Yeah, well, we'll put a pin in that. Anyway, I believe you are recapping Datalore.
All right.
So,
okay, you want to set the timer?
Let's do this. Engage.
The Enterprise is heading to the planet Sigma Omicron, the colony planet of a bunch of scientists where Data was originally found. It turns out that this planet was devastated in some kind of freak accident, and only Data survived, with the memories of the 400 colonists implanted into his memory. Data, Riker, and a bunch of others beam down to the planet, which looks like a soundstage made of cardboard, and for this Doctor Who fan is very happy. Because if there's one thing I love, it's a cardboard planet with like clearly a velvet backdrop, some mood lighting. It's great. They find a underground shelter with nobody in it. Further investigation reveals a bunch of kids' drawings, which all seem to feature a giant snowflake. Also, in a locker, they find a bunch of robot parts, which look suspiciously like Data. They bring the bits on board, and they set about rebuilding the Data-like android. In asking for personal information on how to turn the robot on, Data reveals to Dr. Beverly Crusher that there's actually a little alarm clock switch somewhere in his hip. Riker's first thought is to ask if the robot has a cock, although it's subtly it's more subtle implication, because I think Riker is scared that anybody might be more functional than him in the role of ship's love machine. They construct the robot, who looks and sounds exactly like Data, except for a few things. One, he can use contractions, which Data used contractions before in the show, but this is going to be this is now a retcon, and now Data will never be able to use contractions. Also, the robot Lore has a very distinctive facial tic, which probably doesn't mean anything bad whatsoever. Lore says that Data was actually built first, and he was a flawed model, and that Law, that's the robot's name, was actually built second. As Law acclimatizes to the ship, they teach him how to pilot the ship, and Wesley Crusher starts to notice a few odd things about Law, to which Law responds, "I like you, Wesley. I think you'll be the last to die." This, again, is very subtle subtext. Data has cribbed to the fact that Law has lied about which robot came first, and Law admits that he was actually built first, and he was built to be perfect, but there's a kind of a uncanny valley effect to Law that he's too human-like, and the colonists were freaked out and demanded that Dr. Noonien Sung, a name we're never gonna hear the end of, basically builds a much less human-like model, and that's how we got Data. With more research, it turns out that actually the giant snowflake in the pictures might actually be a great crystalline entity which devastated the planet. Promptly, Law knocks out Data not by using his alarm clock, but by, I don't know, he put something in a champagne and gave him the old Mickey Finn, and then promptly does the old switcheroo. But after working on Data's face, so Data now has the facial tick, and Law does not. Law comes onto the bridge pretending to be Data, and the only person who notices is Wesley, who reacts to this in the least subtle way possible, and basically does the world's worst subtlety check by basically saying, he's clearly the evil robot, why are we trusting him with anything? And that is where we now get the infamous "Shut up, Wesley" of Star Trek fame. Quick note, if you ever meet Will Wheaton in public, do not say "Shut up, Wesley" to him. He won't appreciate it for understandable reasons. Law, pretending to be Data, communicates with the great crystalline entity.
The great crystalline entity has said time is up. I mean, it's not got a mouth or anything, so you know.
No, but it's a giant snow. It's a giant snowflake. So you know that if it ever taught itself humanoid speech, the first things it would say would be "triggered libs."
Wow.
Or some kind of other right-wing dog whistle.
Of course.
So anyway, you got the stopwatch at?
Yep. Go.
So Law, pretending to be Data, goes to the cargo bay to beam it a tree in order to try and establish communication. Wesley, again, is like, that's clearly the evil robot. If I was an adult, you people would actually listen to me. And Picard tells Beverly Crusher to take her son off the bridge. Wesley manages to persuade Crusher to go to Data's quarters to check on which robot is which, and they realize that, oh wait, that's actually Data, dressed in Law's yellow mustard jumpsuit. In the cargo bay, Law is preparing to lower the shield so the great crystalline entity can attack and destroy the crew of the ship, leaving Law alive. It turns out that Law made contact with the great crystalline entity, and let them kill all the colonists and devastate the planet for reasons. He's evil.
Just for the lols.
Just for the lols. Data, Beverly Crusher, and Wesley leap on to the cargo bay to stop Law, and immediately bottle it when Law pulls out a phaser and threatens to kill Wesley Crusher and tells Beverly to leave, otherwise he'll shoot the boy. Beverly leaves, and Law promptly shoots her in the shoulder, setting her coat on fire, which was kind of cool, actually.
Oh my god, it was cool. And horrifying. Just, burn the doctor there.
Always love a good guy on fire stunt gag.
Mm-hmm.
Data and Law get into a fight, But since they're both wearing different clothes, we don't get the quintessential Star Trek cliche of someone saying to shoot us both, and that's how you know which one is the good double. And Data yeets Lore onto the large transporter in the cargo bay, and Wesley beams Lore into space. We don't see where Lore beams up to, and the crystalline entity realizes, well, guess my plan's scarpered, and promptly bollocks off. Picard and Riker come down to the cargo bay, and Picard begrudgingly apologizes to treating Wesley a bit like shit. And yeah, Data's fine with having gained and lost a brother, and the Enterprise flies off, and at no point do we see Lore kind of drifting in space, because that'd be kind of funny if, like, you get the closing shot of the Enterprise, and you just see Lore drift past the camera like he's the Space Corps in Portal 2. The end.
Well, that's 3 minutes and 11 seconds over there.
Not the best.
That's all right. That's all right. We had a slight communication issue where neither of us really studied for Datalore. Both we watch all of the episodes, but we both decided to do Elementary Dear Data, which it's definitely a good one with what you did with Datalore. It's a nice, simple kind of plot with the whole. I was going to say Boy Who Cried Wolf, but no, people just expect Wesley to be wrong automatically, and understandably so.
Yeah, you kind of feel bad for Will Wheaton, who basically has to play like the world's most annoying teenage SWAT.
Yeah.
It's the same problem that they have with Adric in Classic Who, in which you have your young boy protagonist basically be an obnoxious know-it-all and never really give him any actual kind of decent edge or treat him like a real teenager. And so he's just like someone you instinctively just want to tell to shut up.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
And Picard follows his part there.
But yeah, Picard follows his heart to get one of the more memorable gifts from the show. I was just okay. When you were watching the show, were you thinking that if they had done this exact storyline in like a modern TV show, that we would have Lore for like 2 to 3 episodes before we find out he's a villain?
Oh God, probably actually. In Discovery,
it would be probably stretched out. Yeah. It's like, and then in this one, it's like, yeah, they spend 15-20 minutes finding and building Lore, and within 2 minutes, you're like, yeah, he's evil. He's the evil brother.
Guy opens his eyes, and you can see he's got that kind of I'm a piece of shit looking grin on his face. He is a wrong'un from the get-go.
The distinct twitch, like that kind of a, the next most telling evil code they could have given him was it turned out they built the android to have a hunched back.
Or an eye patch.
Or an eye patch. Or 2 eye patches. Like one on each eye.
Yes, I was for perfect droid with my 2 patches. Oh God. Yeah, it's Lore felt very much programmed for comedic evil that no one noticed and was immediately, hey, here are the flight codes, here's how we do everything. You'd think that people would learn maybe don't do that to anyone just automatically, even if they say that they're your robot brother.
Wouldn't it be funny if it turned out that Lore just had a switch on his back, which has had good evil settings, and it just accidentally got nudged into the evil setting?
Or maybe it's on the other hip. This one's on off, this one's good evil.
I had a realization from watching this episode last night. The world of Star Trek doesn't really have robots. By that I mean like drones, or the kind of things that we have in the day to day, where like we have drones, we have bomb disposal robots. They never robots, with the exception of Data and the odd evil android they have in the classic show. They robots always seems to be like a science fiction trope that Star Trek kind of keeps away from. Like,
I mean,
not even like
would things
I
like Peanut Hamper count?
the exocomp. That's like I guess I mean more in the kind of like the more quintessential like golden age kind of Robby the Robot
Yeah.
or the robot from Lost in Space. You'd think that they would have those kind of machines, if only in a kind of like a service capacity.
You've got things like the grain silo robots, like the grain silo drone ships. I guess in the
Yeah.
Trouble with Tribbles sequel. Would that count, or are we talking humanoid-ish?
I'm kind of talking humanoid-ish, because that always seems to be like Star Trek doesn't have droids. Like you know, I don't know if it was that like logistical because they didn't want it to look kind of campy like Lost in Space or Forbidden Planet does, or if there's like an actual kind of like deep lore reason for the same reason why they don't have robots in the Dune universe, which is because artificial intelligences were destroyed in a great religious uprising against artificial intelligence. It's like Data is something purely unique in the world of the Federation, which is he is the only robot type robot.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, and definitely one I'll be keeping an eye out on with the original series, because if any of the shows did it, I would imagine it would be that. And next gen onwards, you don't want anything that could be mistaken for C-3PO.
Yeah.
And canonically, I guess, like if you take it in the historical order, you get a lot of enhanced humans and cyborg kind of people and stuff like that. So maybe they just don't feel a need for one. Because you either have enhanced people or stuff like your exocomps or your cleaning droids, your kind of like flying drone things and all that. So there's not really a space for Robby the Robot.
Is this the part where I kind of just very smugly say, Doctor Who had robots? Even before K9 with the robot dog. This is going to be a side note. I really liked the music in this episode. Like, I don't know, like Star Trek. I feel like from the first season episodes we watched, there is definitely more of an attempt to do more kind of musical soundscapes and then just having, here is the suspense chord, here is the action chord, and this is definitely like, yeah, we're just gonna wail on the synthesizers, maybe stick in some pheromones. Like, there's definitely more of a musical edge to this episode, and I was here for it.
I have to admit, I didn't click any of that music-wise. God, it's one of those things where I feel almost like I need to go back and see, musically what it was doing, because I just didn't notice. And that's going to be more on me than on the show. Really.
Yeah.
It was interesting seeing Data as a brother and is a complete piece of shit. Law's one of those characters that I felt the more that he came back and did stuff, the more diminishing returns it was. In this one, he is worrying. He has the unearned trust of too many people, and that one child who no one really cares for is the one who knows something's up, and he's not even good squealing on him.
I thought there was gonna be a moment when they did twig that it was the wrong robot when Law calls Riker instead of his rank, and he didn't understand what Picard meant by make it so. But he's just like, no, we're just gonna be really stupid here.
Yeah,
And not acknowledge.
it's been so long since I've seen this episode. I did have that moment of, is it going to be like the magic to make the sanest man go mad and go like, okay, the bridge crew have been briefed. They are aware of these shenanigans. They could tell. 'Cause yeah, as you say, Law keeps fucking up. I know this is year one of the mission for this configuration of the crew, so they're not all used to Data's foibles, and again, some like the contractions get retconned in, but yeah, you'd hope that people would notice.
But yeah, do you have anything else to say about this episode?
Not really. I like the crystalline entity as a malevolent force, and I love that the more we watch these Star Trek episodes, the more space is just full of shit like that. Like, there are so many malevolent, unknowable entities out there. It's kind of great.
I saw this great article on Tor.com this week because they've had a week dedicated to space opera, and they had an article which basically said space is terrifying, actually. And I was like, yes, finally, someone else understands. Because yeah, space is huge, vast, and it's terrifying. And these people are on a ship which gets attacked on a very frighteningly regular basis. You think more people would be scared to live in space?
You would, wouldn't you?
Like, you're in a tin can in space. Something's gonna try and do you.
I mean, that is entirely why Riker's there. Although that's in a different way.
Did you catch Data calling out Picard on Law's pronouns?
Oh,
because Picard refers to Law when he's talking to Data as an it, and Data goes, I it as well. And it's like, oh man, if this episode got aired this year, you would have angry guys on Twitter going, ugh, Star Trek implied pronouns. I am angry at this for no good rational reason. I hate pronouns.
Oh god. Such doofuses.
Yep.
Right. Well, this pair of doofuses are going to have to work out where on our big list of best to worst Datalore is going to be. And that list is ever growing. At the moment, our number one spot is still occupied by Deep Space Nine's pilot episode Emissary. Our halfway point at 17 is a good Enterprise episode with the Andorian incident. I will stop sounding surprised by that one day. Today is not that day. And finally,
it had to happen.
It did. Odds-wise, it had to happen eventually. And yeah, unfortunately, the worst spot is also occupied by an Enterprise episode, this time future tense, and yeah, a whole lot of nothing, and some poor Doctor Who references and undercooked time loop stuff. So Datalore, it's, to be honest, last time I revisited season 1 of Next Generation, I gave up partway through because there's a lot of bad. There's a lot of it doesn't know what it's doing, and not in a charming way, like the Conscience of the King in the original series, but in an ugly way, like Code of Honor.
When I tried to rewatch Next Gen during COVID, because I think so many people started rewatching Trek during COVID.
Yeah.
I think I got about a few episodes before Skin of Evil in my rewatch, and I kind of like the very weird Next Gen where it doesn't really know what it's doing, and it's just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. As I've said, like, Next Gen wasn't my favorite of the Trek shows because it does feel in places the very safe kind of there is no continuation. The characters feel like action figures of themselves. Whereas I kind of like the weirder tone when they're still trying to work out what Star Trek's going to be for the 80s and 90s. And I feel it's still kind of learning, and I kind of like watching it when it's learning because I enjoy seeing, will it go weird? Will it go how Trek is gonna go? Will it have the guy from Fleetwood Mac in a giant fish head? I want more of the guy from Fleetwood Mac in a giant fish head.
It definitely has some hits and some misses, and where it hits, it's pretty good. And this is like one of the better season 1 TNG episodes for me.
All right, so let's have a look. Okay, is it better than Genesis?
Oh, I don't think so, to be honest. Genesis has a lot of fun and a lot of spooky stuff going on. It's like it looks interesting as well, which, you know, this is fine. It's got some good tension. I like that as a point of comparison because both have those good dark elements for kind of, you know, not quite horror, but, you know, oh my god, Data's been replaced and it's been switched off. Oh, how's he going to get out of this one? But yeah, personally, if I'm given a choice, I would prefer Barclay as a spider.
A spider. And Worf clearly killing someone.
Yes, yeah, Worf definitely murdering someone.
All right. Okay, next question. Is it better or worse than Riker's Klingon work experience with A Matter of Honor at number 19?
Oh, shit. Oh dear. Like, the drama, there's better drama in Datalore. I kind of like the mundanity of bacteria being a problem and Riker having to navigate his way through a Klingon cultural exchange. How about you? What do you make of that comparison?
I think in some ways this is a better, but also it doesn't feel as polished as A Matter of Honor does.
I guess the other thing is for the cultural relevance of introducing lore, introducing the Noonien Singh dynasty, and all that comes with that in the future.
It's like, you know, it comes down to, like, you know, if you were gonna watch an episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, and your choice was A Matter of Honor or Datalore, which would you want to sit down with a beer and watch? Or a cup of tea?
God, that is a difficult one. Like, both occupy that same sort of space for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it might end up being Datalore, to be honest. Like, it's a...
Like, Matter of Honor is good, but, like, you know, I could probably watch Datalore, like, within, again. Yeah. And I watched it, like, 24 hours prior to recording. And, like, yeah, it has some fun. It has some fun into play. I love the cardboard set.
Love that planet set. That's so nice.
Love that planet set. I think I actually saw this one when it first aired on BBC Two, and I do remember that the planet has always kind of stuck with me, and like the kids' drawings of the great crystalline entity. So I might have to say this is probably a better than Matter of Honor.
I think it's probably better than the next one. That's Discoveries Through the Valley of Shadows, which has some fun elements of it.
I think this might be better than the Andorian incident.
Oh, yeah, okay. As much as I love Jeffrey Combs in that. I think that's a valid shout.
I really don't want to be mean to the one good episode of Enterprise we have high enough on the list that it's not, skulking around the bottom slots.
It's fine. There
But
might
yeah,
be
I
more.
think
There has to be more.
so. Enterprise, the Andorian incident gets demoted from number 17 down to number 18.
And that is our first Picard synergy. I guess technically Picard trailer synergy, because Lore could appear for 5 minutes or something in the entire
Yeah,
show. That's for fun of doing this a few days early.
Lore turns up and immediately gets beamed out into space again.
Oh, that'd be great. No, fuck off. There you go. Space. Have fun. Okay, good. So, of all things, normally we cover 3 separate shows, but next up we have another Star Trek Next Generation episode. And this one is Season 2, Episode 3, with Elementary, Dear Data. This aired on the 5th of December 1988. This was written by Brian Allen Lane and directed once again by Rob Bowman. And the UK and US number 1 hits. The UK had Robin Beck with First Time. I have no memory of this at all.
It's fine. It's like, there are so many songs which are just like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
the US had Willed Power with Baby I Love Your Way / Freebird. Which, yeah, again, like, I recognize this one at least, but it's, I don't know. When I existed in 1988, I guess I was still listening to Talking Heads on my dad's side and like Beatles and Floyd's on my mum's. So there were, I didn't really get this side of pop.
No.
It's interesting to experience, and hopefully it hasn't busted the algorithm, so it recommends me more of it.
Right, I read too. As Beast once said in issue 1 of X-Men, to quote the vernacular of rock and roll.
Wow.
I always remember that because it's on one of his trading cards in the 90s, and it's just kind of fun to read the trading cards for 90s Beast and go, what would his quote be on a 2023 trading card? Ooh, time for war crimes.
Yes, of course, if you forget about morality for a moment, I could, harvest these child organs for a more efficient train system or something. I don't know.
Beast would hand over mutants to the great crystalline entity.
Oh god, he would be all up in that crystalline entity.
Yep. Anyway, all right. This is not a Beast from the X-Men as a podcast. This is a Star Trek podcast, honest, and time set and engage.
The Enterprise has shown up early to meet up with the USS Victory because they're a big bunch of SWATs. This means they've got some downtime. Data pops down to engineering, and LaForge shows off a lovely model ship that is made by hand as a gift to the Victory. What a suck up. Still, the main thing here is Data doesn't understand the joy in manually building something rather than simply replicating it. We'll put a pin in that because it'll be relevant soon. LaForge says, I've done this for me, for you. Let's go play Sherlock Holmes. This has always been a dream of Data's, apparently. So, how exciting. They go off to the holodeck, and I love the idea that anyone playing on the holodeck has to traipse around the entire ship in costume for whatever they're doing in there. Data is dressed up as Sherlock Holmes. LaForge is Watson. And even though he did this for Data, he's less aware of the whole Sherlock Holmes works. Just that his BFF loves it. So he lets Data fanboy over the place in 221B Baker Street and does a suitable job of narrating Sherlock's life. That doesn't last for too long, though, as Lestrade shows up in a tizzy as a gentleman accosted by some travellers, and we won't be using the G word here on Casual Trek. Data immediately debunks the case says, oh no, this guy himself is dodgy, and LaForge is very upset that Data's just speed running Sherlock Holmes. He quits all this, leaves, and in 10 forward, Dr. Pulaski overhears some bitching about Data, and she loves this idea. She really has it in for him. She suggests the potential for failure is a good thing that's kind of missing in all this, and Data is just like an AI artist. He pulls in existing information rather than coming up with any conclusions on his own.
Ouch! Big slam on Data.
So, a wager is made. Yeah, well, hey, it's not me, it's Pulaski. Anyway, there's a challenge to...
making that episode title.
So yeah, a wager's made about getting the holodeck to make a scenario that will actually challenge him this time. And Pulaski's going to come along to watch it all go to hell and experience a holodeck for the first time. As soon as they go in to Holodeck London, there's an urchin thief running off, and Data immediately goes, no, that's a ruse. This guy, going to a red-headed league, is going to get the old doorbell snake trap. Pulaski immediately calls out his fraud and goes, look, this is just AI versus AI. Neither of them can make anything original. And they call up the Holodeck's arch while arguing, and a shadowy NPC in this scenario appears to have noticed it. Oh dear. LaForge asks to make an adversary capable of defeating Data. As soon as that's said, there's a surge on the Enterprise for a moment. Oh dear. The computer's up to something a bit bad. When everyone's gone, the NPC that's noticed the arch realizes he can summon it as well. That's probably bad. And while all this is going on, Data and LaForge wander the streets looking for a mystery. Pulaski roams loose, curious about everything, poking and prodding it all, because, again, first holodeck experience. Then there's a scream in the distance. Oh my god, Pulaski's been abducted. The game is afoot, and hopefully a human being isn't going to die. But we'll see. Data and LaForge follow some footfalls only to find a dead end. And Lestrade pops up going, hey guys, there's been a murder to distract you with. Data is not sympathetic about this at all. He could be busy doing other things. And the murder is unrelated. He solves it immediately and spots the mysterious villain sneaking away. He realizes the computer's acting on its own. All of this is made up and is so excited. Especially because this guy is going to be his nemesis. It's going to be Moriarty. Oh, yes. That's all well and good, but in searching for him, he finds yet another dead end. Luckily, the pair pass their detect hidden doors check and find Moriarty's hidden lair. When they're in there, they see not only is he aware of the arch, he also hands a concerning sketch over.
No.
Oh, dear. Okay. Well.
Okay. Before I start the timer, I'm going to be a complete nerd here. The Red-Headed League is from the story, The Red-Headed League.
Yeah.
The pull cord, which releases a fucking snake, is from the Speckled Band, and that is, while the scandal in Bohemia does concern a stolen photograph, that is not how a scandal in Bohemia goes.
See, again,
I call fraud.
See, yeah, this is exactly what Pulaski says. This is just the AI pulling extant data.
But yeah, even when they're doing the story of a scandal in Bohemia, that's not how the story of a scandal in Bohemia goes. There are no accosted by travelers. Anyway, this is not a Sherlock Holmes podcast. This is a Charlie You Bitch podcast. I still think we need to make that the title. Or I want alternate title art for this episode, so I could put that on the Twitter, which is the title card, which just says Charlie You Bitch. Anyway, this is not a Charlie You Bitch podcast.
I mean, it is, but you know.
I'm starting the timer now.
Okay, anyway, this concerning sketch gets handed over to our guys. They leave the holodeck, Data tries to deactivate the program, but he can't. Oh no! And we see what the sketch is of. It's of the Enterprise. Wow! It's time to call a team meeting because this holodeck scenario has gone awry, as so many are wont to do. In the ready room, LaForge explains what went on and that he's accidentally overridden the holodeck and the computer, and his wording of a foe to defeat Data, not a foe to defeat Holmes, looks like that was the problem here. So it's time to get JL involved. Oh yeah. Meanwhile, in the simulation, Pulaski is having tea and scones with Moriarty because he may be a villain, but he's a civilized villain, and I can appreciate that in villains.
Charming villain.
Yeah, it's what you want in a nemesis. So yeah, he
Yeah.
obviously fancies her a bit and doesn't know what to do with his new awareness. He wants to lure in Picard, and luckily that is exactly what Picard's doing. So Picard and Data pair up. They enter hologram London, which is beginning to glow weirdly, and I like the dissonance of the glowy holodeck bars on Victorian London walls there. Picard and Moriarty meet and have a clash of minds and a kind of fairly decent chat. Moriarty just wants to exist. He knows he's made of energy. He knows he's going to get erased, Reboot-style, when they close the program. And Picard says, look, we will save you. We'll literally click save, store you somewhere in a nice folder away from all of this, and we'll work out what to do to get you back out. And then, like Professor Charles Xavier, also played by Patrick Stewart, he deals with his problems the exact same way. He closes everything down, goes about his life, and thinks not a jot about this poor entity's life. Leaves him in a folder somewhere to rot, and calls it a day. Well done. We get a nice little thing at the end with LaForge, who's broken his little ship in all of the rumblings of what was going on when the holodeck was overriding the ship itself. And never mind, he'll fix it soon, which is good because the real USS Victory has shown up. The end.
2 minutes, 53 seconds.
Oh my god, I thought I would have gone way over. I mean, I did.
No.
But...
Yeah. I have some trivia notes.
Oh, yes?
Yes. They thought that Sherlock Holmes was public domain.
No.
And he's not. So they had to pay out, which is probably why they don't use Moriarty again until later on. So maybe they were planning to have Moriarty be like a recurring thing. 2, the original ending was going to have Picard literally trick Moriarty into stepping outside the holodeck where he would promptly cease to exist, but they felt that it would make Picard seem too duplicitous. So we have the happy ending where instead he gets fire saved.
Did Picard already do this, or with Dixon Hill, or does that come later? Because the bad guy from Dixon Hill does that.
That was season 1. That episode with the film noir.
Yeah.
But Gene Roddenberry wanted it changed, so they changed it to the ending they had now. This is where I'm going to be my Sherlock Holmes pedant.
Mm-hmm.
James Moriarty is not a proper villain. He is a plot device only created because Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had gotten fed up of writing Sherlock Holmes stories and wanted to write quote-unquote serious literature. So he basically created the ultimate villain, so Holmes' death would feel like a worthy sacrifice and not he gets shanked in the back by like an aristocrat, and he's basically been built up through lots and lots of pastiches and really bad films to where he's essentially Sherlock Holmes's Joker.
Yeah.
And not like Sherlock Holmes's random villain.
I mean, the same with the importance that Irene Adler was given if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yep. Irene Adler only appears in one story. Moriarty appears in one. Actually, doesn't even. I don't think he even appears. I think he's just mentioned. I can't remember if Watson actually meets Moriarty in The Final Problem, which is the story where Sherlock Holmes originally dies until he gets better. The guy who's playing Moriarty is great in this.
Oh, he is very good fun.
He doesn't look like how I imagine Moriarty. I kind of base how Moriarty looks from how he appears in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen comic, and I think that's how he's meant to look as he's referenced in the stories, instead of a very, very kind of dashing 80s haired villain.
Yeah, it's I don't know. The guy was good as Moriarty. I liked that ultimately it wasn't a case of we must best him, but this is a problem. We've accidentally made life, and we need to fix that.
I admit I was kind of disappointed in that, because the whole issue of whether or not Data has the intuition to be able to solve a Holmes-style mystery without having to call on his Holmes fanboy knowledge. Because essentially, Dr. Pulaski is, how the episode concludes, Dr. Pulaski is right. Because Data fails, and you'd think we would never hear the end of it. But the moment that Picard gets pulled into the story, 20 minutes in, it then becomes a Jean-Luc Picard versus Moriarty in a battle of wits, and I kind of felt that doesn't really fit with the first half of the story.
It felt like a shame. It felt like the Thor, actually, which goes from a B'Elanna Kim episode to a Janeway episode. And I like the Thor. She's one of my favourites with TNG, and he vanishes halfway through the episode and doesn't really get anything to do once he has to get in touch with, the higher ups and go, I've goofed. I've accidentally made life. The holodeck's gone rogue again. I mean, everyone's had to admit it to Jean-Luc at some point. But yeah, it's an odd one for that. I guess the thought was it's going to have to be Jean-Luc versus Moriarty, given the perceived villainness of Moriarty. But yeah, Data, I'd say rather than being completely defeated, it's just a DNF. Didn't finish, didn't complete it. It's still up in the air whether he is or isn't, because from what I remember of season 2, it's a big factor between Data and Pulaski, the back and forth. Is he a real boy? Is he just a machine? Kind of thing. So conclusively answering it in episode 3 of that season probably wasn't on the cards.
Yeah. At the same time, Pulaski seems to have no qualms about being charmed by Moriarty.
Yeah.
Even, but he clearly looks real, but it's just like, you're artificial intelligence who's just pretending to be a fictional character. What makes Moriarty any different from Data? But apparently he somehow has sentience where Data does not. Or sentience without, sentience. Data has sentience but no emotion, even though he clearly has emotion in this episode, because he is very excited to be touching all of Sherlock's thing. That room is way too clean to be Sherlock Holmes' room in 221B Baker Street. There is no knife attached to the wall. There is no slipper where Holmes keeps his tobacco, and I could go on all day.
Yeah, the drugs aren't there.
Yeah, the cocaine is not there. It's, admittedly, I love Data and LaForge getting into character.
Yes.
It's like Data kind of he's going full Jeremy Brett in this.
Despite, again, like with the building of the ship, not clicking that, he wants the idea of playing Sherlock Holmes. He hasn't figured out you need to actually do the playing. You need to actually take part rather than go, oh, here's the solution, solved it.
It's the difference between a written story and playing a game. in the stories, Holmes is only ever going to be as intelligent and as clever as the writer makes him. Whereas if you're playing a game, you have, you're a GM. Like the success or fail of a campaign is really going to depend on how well the game is played and how dumb your players are.
I mean, like, the dumb thing is an interesting one these days. I feel
I'm being a bit disingenuous of that with my use of the word dumb.
yeah. The glorious chaos they bring can be very good fun.
I love how Data is railroading the campaign. In the second half, it was like Lestrade turns up. There's been a murder, and Data's like he's doing a player railroad because like Lestrade is clearly the DM going, okay, can you get back on track? Get back on track. And Data's like, nope, don't care. Dead. What a shame. Over here now.
Yeah, that thing of no, we've hyperfixated on this other thing. So that's what the campaign is now. The plot? Nah, mate.
I do love that. I love how LaForge is playing Watson as written and not stupid. Because he gets into it. He's like, I think this man has been strangled from behind for these reasons. At no point is he playing dumb Watson.
I mean, he's still not right in his diagnosis with the guy who gets murdered, but he gives it a good go for someone that's apparently not all too familiar.
I will say the plot that the computer with the dead body and like the guy was strangled by the very evident sex worker with the necklace. That was clever. I think that could be a very decent Holmes-esque mystery in its own right. Although Holmes never wanders London looking for trouble.
No.
Like Holmes sits in his room waiting for people to come to him. Holmes does not go out on patrol like he's Victorian Batman.
That did feel very much like their kind of, we need the plot hooks. In theory, this could throw us anything. So we got nothing. Let's just go here and hope for the best.
Do you feel disappointed that in the big deal they make of Worf getting into a suit, that they don't show off Worf's Klingon-suited swagger in Victorian London?
I was very disappointed. I was like, yes! Okay, I forgot Worf was in this in costume. It's like, no, he's not going to do anything.
I love that Riker compliments Worf on the suit, and he's like, thanks. Worf never kind of gets to be deadpan snarky. He's always just too serious. So the little moments where he clearly has like a very subtle sense of humor, I kind of live for.
Yes. Yeah, more of that, really, from Worf would be good.
So, as a loyalty to Sherlock Holmes, it will be first and last on the list. But on the big Star Trek list that we have, where do you think this goes, Charlie?
Oh, I mean, it's another fun one. And I remember season 2 being, again, similarly shaky to season 1, but for different reasons, really, with it. So, I mean, is it better than Genesis? It might be.
I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah.
It's like, I can watch Data and LaForge just bumble around Victorian London like a couple of bumbling doofuses all
it's
day.
A joy. Like those two getting into scrapes, Moriarty realizing he can see the arch, and the existential weirdness of that.
Although he sees the arch before he's given the sentience to be able to interact with the arch. That's a bit of a plot. That's a bit of like a plot hole, because I don't think the holodeck characters. Yeah. I don't think for the most part holodeck characters are aware of the fact that they're in a simulation. So that happens a bit too quickly, a bit earlier than planned.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things that I could probably no prize away, and just forgive and go, okay.
Yeah.
maybe he was just more fixated on them and their weirdness in the middle of the street or anything like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, okay, so Beth and Genesis.
Better than Genesis.
Okay. I mean, it's not better than Cause and Effect, which is our highest TNG,
No.
up in number 3.
I definitely think this is in the 11 to 15 range.
So what, between Crossover and Where Pleasant Fountains Lie? I think better than Pleasant
Yes.
Fountains, as fun as that was.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't think it's as... Do you think it's better than Crossover, which is number 11, and that's the episode where Odo fucking explodes?
And this one doesn't have Odo fucking exploding in it. That's a problem.
No, but it have Picard doing a very nifty trick with a topper.
This is true.
When he makes the top, like that was I wonder if that's Patrick Stewart going, I'm English, I know how top hats work, and just kind of throwing in. Patrick Stewart looks amazing in the Victorian suit. Like he looks fantastic dressed to the nines.
Definitely. I think they're strangely comparable, actually, Crossover and Elementary Dear Data, with seeing familiar people slightly, in a different environment, in a different world. But I think Elementary Dear Data might just be more fun.
Yeah, which is a shame, because I think Crossover has kept its spot for a while.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So let's move that down. In the new number 11, we have Elementary Dear Data. Right. Well, we've done 2 TNG episodes, and that means it's time for the big event. It's time to finally watch the pilot episode for Picard. This is one of the ones I knew was going to be a difficult one when we were talking about covering all of Star Trek, between the very serialized nature of it and just not really caring for it. So the good news for me is that you drew the short straw on this one. So I'll run us through the details, and then my good friend Miles, it's going to be your time to recap. So this episode is season 1, episode 1, titled Remembrance, which aired on the 23rd of January 2020. The teleplay was by Akiva Goldsman and James Duff. Story by Akiva? I'm not sure now. Goldsman.
I don't know. I put Akiva, but there we go.
Yeah, Akiva Goldsman, Michael Chabon. Again, I should actually.
Chabon.
Yeah. Kirsten Beyer, Alex Kurtzman, and James Duff. And it's a good one when you have to have 5 people handling the story. And then it was also directed by Hanel M. Culpepper. The UK number 1 hit was Stormzy, featuring, among others, friend of the pod, Ed Sheeran, and Own It. And the US hit was Roddy Ricch with The Box. These two made me feel like an old man.
They're fine. Like, it's not my kind of music, but yeah.
Yeah, they're probably fine for the folks for the young'uns who like this sort of thing. Yeah, I'd heard people praising Stormzy before, but never bothered listening to any of his stuff. And sure, fine. How dare you bring Ed Sheeran back into this podcast, Mr. Stormzy? But
Ed Sheeran is following us like a great crystalline entity.
He is. Oh my god! Now I want
great crystalline
someone with
Ed Sheeran.
Oh, the great crystalline entity. I need someone that's good at doing art to make that now.
Is this Photoshop, like the Enterprise view screen, but there's Ed Sheeran flying through space? I don't know if it's like a full-bodied Ed Sheeran, or it's just Ed Sheeran's head, like Ed Sheeran is the Doctor in an opening sequence for Doctor Who, whichever.
Hello?
Oh god. Ed Sheeran as the Doctor. Ugh. So, welcome back. Turns out that if we mock Ed Sheeran too much, the great Ed Sheeran entity comes down from subspace and screws up the recording. So, we beg forgiveness, oh magnificent Ed of Sheeran. Don't hurt us. We are but humble podcasters who don't make as much money as you do for your maudlin James Blunt-esque babble. Ed Sheeran, you bitch.
Oh, I see. So he's for bitch now, not me. Okay, good.
Yeah, do you want to write an episode card titled Ed Sheeran, you bitch?
I mean, I probably will. I don't know. I normally make them as I'm listening to and editing this, so hopefully future me will.
Right. Right.
So,
Right. Let's get let's set the timer.
Yep. Are you ready to Picard?
I am always Picard.
Engage.
On 10 forward on the USS Enterprise, Data and Picard play poker. Picard doesn't want the game to end. I wonder why that is. We see them orbiting Mars, and then the planet is rocked by a bunch of explosions. It was all a dream. Picard wakes up on his chateau in France. He has retired from Starfleet and now grows wine and drinks the day away with his doggy, as his household is maintained by two Romulans, Laris and Zaban. Meanwhile, in Greater Boston, a young woman named Daj and her boyfriend drink and celebrate her getting into the Daystrom Institute of Artificial Intelligence /Computer/Robotics. A collection of masked assassins transport in and they kill Daj's boyfriend, and they try and incapacitate her before she awakens, and that's the term they use. Suddenly, Daj turns into a killing machine and kills most of her attackers and flees. Meanwhile, Picard is being interviewed at his estate by the Federation News Network. 10 years ago, there was a supernova which destroyed the Romulan homeworld and a good chunk of their territory, and forcing them to evacuate. Picard was the instigator of a great relocation effort of the Romulan people, despite the Federation's misgivings of aiding its oldest and most deadliest enemies. He undertakes this grand undertaking to the Dunkirk evacuations of World War II. The relocation effort was thwarted when a group of synthetic androids went rogue and set in course a huge destruction of the Martian construction shipyards, which were building fresh ships to help with the relocation. And this caused a ban on synthetic life forms in Starfleet, and Starfleet kind of pulled out of the whole relocation effort and, withdrawing from the galaxy, whatever that means, and Picard, losing faith in Starfleet, resigned. The interview doesn't go well, as Picard just starts grumpy old manning the Federation newscaster, telling her that she knows nothing of history and the pain of loss and survival. Meanwhile, Daj sees this newscast being broadcast live and goes to see Picard. She pleads him for help. Somehow she knows Picard will help her. Even if she's not sure why, she has this necklace which has two conjoining circles which grabs Picard's attention. Role-playing game style. He clicks on it, looks at it. Interesting. Gives back. He's unsure of Daj, but he wants to help her. Picard has another dream. This time it's Data painting in his vineyard, and the dream of Data asks Picard to finish the painting. He wakes, and he sees that the painting is actually hanging in his study. Daj disappeared during the night, and Picard, feeling the sense of the chase, goes to his archives at the Starfleet headquarters in San Francisco. It turns out that the painting is actually one of a set that Data gifted him 14 years previously. On the painting in the archives, the face of a woman is seen, and it's the woman Daj. The painting was titled Daughter. in the streets of Paris, Dahj communicates with her mother, who tells her to go back to Picard. The broadcast glitching. Clearly, Dahj mentioned Ed Sheeran as well, and she enters a kind of trance and is able to, hack into the system and locate Picard. She transports to San Francisco and they reunite. She thinks she has some kind of schizophrenia. Picard immediately believes that Dahj is, in her own way, Data's daughter, a highly advanced android who thinks and acts like she's human until a defense programming kicks in. Picard plans to take Dahj to the Dace Institute, but she hears her attackers coming, who literally transport in, and Dahj pulls out some superhuman CGI jumping ability and is able to fight them off. Her fights to no avail, and a phaser rifle explodes, killing her instantly, but not before revealing that her attackers are actually Romulans. Picard is knocked out by the explosion and awakens back at his chateau. Picard curses his retreating into his own self-pity and heads to Daystrom himself, where he meets Dr. Jurati, and asks if it's possible to make a sentient android out of flesh and bone. Jurati tells him that this won't potentially be possible for another 1,000 years, but the section of Daystrom which was headed by Dr. Bruce Maddox...
Time up.
Alright, tell me when the stopwatch is going.
Okay. We power through. Okay, go.
Dr. Maddox, which was heading this part of Fort. After the synthetic ban, they're not allowed to do any actual practical research, and everything has to be theoretical. Maddox, I guess, disappeared shortly after. Jurati pulls out B4, who was another Data-like robot from a Star Trek film I really don't want to have to watch for a second time in my life. Jurati explains that they could have potentially reconstructed Data's code from a technobabble process called fractal neuronic coding, and they could have essentially derived all of Data from a single positronic neuron. The same design of this idea is the same design of the two conjoined circles on Dahj's necklace, which Picard still has. Jurati believes that Maddox may have been able to salvage some part of Data and use it to finally complete his work, using the woman in the painting as a model to base the physical design. There's one other thing, though. Due to how the design works, they could only be constructed in pairs, which means there's another one of these androids out there in deep space at something called the Romulan Reclamation Site. A very charming Romulan called Narek consults a scientist called Soji. Soji is the twin of Dahj that we've been looking for, and the reclamation site is actually the wreckage of a Borg cube.
Oh my god.
Cliffhanger.
Wow. Yeah, that's a minute and 42. There, with that. Good powering through. I wasn't sure whether you were going to just do 5-second kind of boom, quick couple of sentence summary with it, because a lot of time is spent, but not a massive amount happens with this. It's a lot of build.
A lot happens. God, this is a Netflix style binge plot. My biggest problem with Picard and a good chunk of Discovery is that it really feels like it's designed for the Netflix HBO binge model, where you don't just watch one episode of a TV show, you're watching part 1 of 10, and we're gonna stretch it. We're gonna stretch it. It's gonna feel stretched, and it's deconstructed storytelling. I know we referred to deconstructed storytelling on this show before, and it really kind of feels it, and especially here. And at times that can really help for greater depth of character, and other times it really feels like we're just kind of making time until the time when we've scheduled for the big reveal to happen.
Yeah, I hit a point of dissatisfaction with a number of prestige shows around the time of Preacher and Man in the High Castle, where I felt increasingly so many of those shows were a build up to a finale that would then tease some stuff for the next season, and it would drag its
Yeah.
feet slowly towards a plot, and it would do its best to keep things kind of vague and uncertain as it went. And like, I guess rewatching this, it looks very nice. It's very nicely shot. It definitely looks more prestige than, say, Discovery. But I, even at the end of the first episode, I have to ask why with it.
My big problem is that I know in the promotion they were real like they were really talking about how we're gonna see how Starfleet has lost its way. I guess because Patrick Stewart is just as pissed off about Trump and Brexit as we all are.
Yeah.
And I remember this a lot of people complaining, rah rah rah, Star Trek political. And the thing is, I never get any evidence of this. Like, we get told that Starfleet has lost its way. We get told again and again how Picard has lost faith in what Starfleet represents, and how Starfleet has pulled back in its ideas, and what it stands for and its causes, but we never see it.
I mean,
We're just told it.
there's the whole not helping the Romulans.
But, like, you know, I feel like that's one part, and we never really see it in practice. And the only real, like, out of the two, we've both watched this season.
Yeah.
Before. And the one big Starfleet, out of the two Starfleet officers we get in the show, one of whom will turn out to be a Romulan deep cover agent. So, we never really see Picard's griping represented well. I don't feel. There's stuff later, there's like a few bits here and there, but we never get a big standout moment. It just feels like Picard is just old man yelling at cloud.
Yeah, I think there's a want of making him prestige hero who is grizzled, you know, action hero-y at times. And I had the realization just before starting this, watching the trailer for season 3 again, and it's like, this is movie Picard. You know, this is old, angry movie Picard, not old TV show Picard, really, because they felt like two very different entities.
You know, I will happily watch Patrick Stewart just, you know, Patrick Stewart on screen, because, you know, he's visibly older. Vocally, he sounds a lot older.
Oh my god.
But at the same time, you know, the guy's skills have not... The guy's acting talents have never diminished.
Yeah,
like, I've seen...
I'm pleased they didn't give him any actiony things to do, because they do occasionally in the first 2 seasons of Picard, and every time it makes me nervous, not for Jean-Luc Picard, but for Patrick Stewart. It's one of those, oh no, mate, you need to be having a cup of tea. You need to be, like, chilling out a bit at this point, not running around pretending to be a hero, because, I mean, that wasn't massively your deal before, but it doubly so now.
Like, you know, I like the parts where Picard is given a mystery to solve, and he's working out the clues. I enjoy it, but at the same time, I'm thinking, this is Logan. Yeah. This is Logan, Patrick Stewart, and we've seen this. Like, there could be better ways to present this story.
Yeah.
Like, Michael Chabon is an incredibly skilled novelist. He wrote The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. He wrote a really good Sherlock Holmes novella called The Final Solution, which takes place during the Second World War. I think he wrote the script for Spider-Man 2. I just feel, I just feel that the story beats we've kind of seen before with Logan, and it doesn't feel. I don't know. It doesn't feel like Star Trek in the ways it could be. It just feels, at this point, it just feels like generic space action show with the guy from Star Trek.
Yeah. There are a lot of very generic prestige drama beats, especially with revisiting a thing. So yeah, he's not living his best life, even if he's on a vineyard in France in some kind of polycule with a few Romulans, and his dog, who's called Number One, which
He's
of course,
he's a good dog.
Yeah,
He's a good dog.
he is. I assume he's called Number One because he keeps humping things.
I'm just thinking. I was just like, I wonder if Number One has ever met Riker. Because I can just imagine, like, the end of Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade. We named the dog Number One.
Oh God. Yeah. Oh, and a couple of familiar faces for me here. The interviewer, what is it, Maren Dunge? She's
Yeah.
she's Francine in Alias. She was the normal life friend
Oh,
of Sydney Bristow in Alias, who,
okay.
because they realised none of that was working out for them, ditched her and then killed her and replaced her with basically someone who'd been made up to look like Francine. And that was kind of fun, getting her to get a bit more villainous. And of course, all the Brady, who anyone who's listened to this from the start and heard the calibration episode will have heard me talk about Eternal Law, the show about lawyers who are also angels stuck on this earth. And she's the kind of she's Mrs. Sheringham who looks after them in the office and evidently has her own kind of baggage to deal with. So yeah, it was fun seeing her in this as part of
So,
whatever deal Picard's got going on in the vineyard.
so the Romulan Narek, who turns up very brief at the end,
Yeah,
I thought was the guy who plays Spock in Discovery.
yeah,
Because he has a very similar kind of face. From I'm like, Spock, is that you?
he's, I don't know, he's like, if that guy was like a bit more of a D-bag kind of thing. Like this guy, he
A bit more.
feels like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a bit slimy. He's probably aware of close-up magic and stuff, you know.
This guy probably negs.
Yeah, definitely.
Unlike Riker, who asked no, Riker doesn't neg.
No, Riker is very respectful.
Just like,
In fact, yeah, sorry, on my notes I just have Romulan fuckboy because I couldn't remember his name.
sadly, that's not going to be the title for this episode.
No.
Just I feel bad. Kind of. Sometimes I kind of feel bad when I have to talk negative about a show.
Yeah.
Because it has it's not like with Enterprise when there's very clearly like no ideas and there's no gas in the tank. Because like Picard, I feel Picard is trying. I think the prestige TV format just doesn't really work for Star Trek. And I feel it, like early Discovery, it's trying too much to be dark and it's trying too much to be Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
By we have lost our way, we have lost what we believe in, and never really showing what it is that we fundamentally believe in.
Yeah. What you like, oh, it's a bit shit. We should be better. We're not going to present any solutions. Because in theory, if it's all like this, aside from that Romulan spy, is anything vastly improved in all of this, or is
Like
it just a
If
new quest about Data's mission and stuff that wasn't really part of his thing. And JL, that rogue maverick, who wasn't really that rogue or mavericky. That's why Riker was brought on board.
I know, like, we get some stuff later on that, like, the Federation doesn't do the kind of peacekeeping that it used to in, like, the parts of space where, there is less, I guess, law and order.
Yeah.
But again, Starfleet's Starfleet's status as peacekeepers in the Alpha Quadrant always just feels as tenuous as what we need the crew to do this week. We just never really. I don't feel we see much of the big statement as the show will progress, to the point where when we get to the end, it never really feels earned about what Starfleet is doing now, or what Starfleet is not doing now, to make us all go, ooh, Starfleet has lost its grander ideals. And do we need to keep having does Star Trek need to keep having the same discussion of, ooh, have we lost our ideals? Because I feel you can have Star Trek talk about and be in conflict with the ideals of the Federation.
Yeah.
It's just if you keep I think modern Star Trek sometimes falls into a loop of we have to keep repeating the question about what our ideals stand for, because that's just kind of how we are as a cultural zeitgeist. That we're just all kind of questioning what is our society anymore, and is it even worth it?
Again, it's exactly you hit it on the head there. Star Trek Jeff Johns. Every event we've lost our way. We need to learn to do hope a bit better. No, we won't provide a solution, and repeat. And yeah, there is some potential, but it just feels, I don't know, unnecessary. I think like the other Star Treks don't really have a weird elite group of ninja pop up for a fight early on. Like that always surprises me with this episode. Like, oh god, we're doing this. That felt far more Into Darkness than this timeline.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So
I don't want to be like, if this is what got Patrick Stewart to finally come back as Picard, I can't fully hate on it, but I want to see what it was in pre-production that made Patrick Stewart want to sign back on.
aside from a check, because man got paid and good for that. But
Man got paid. Like, people got paid to be in this, and great. People got paid to make this. That's great. I just kind of want to see what it was beyond, because clearly Patrick Stewart has been very kind of like, I don't want to be Picard again. That's done. That's done. And it's been a good chunk of time since Nemesis that, whatever they offered him, or whatever kind of meeting he had with the producers and the creatives to kind of want to come back, was clearly something that impressed him. I just want to see what it was that impressed Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. Okay. So,
because he's clearly not doing like a Christopher Lee and just take the money, say the lines, run to the bank.
Yeah. So on our list, I'm scrolling down.
Oh God, ouch.
Just the good news is it's scroll worthy now, rather than that our list is tiny. But my eyes went for Thor and to Caretaker, and like for Caretaker's pilot, it did some stuff. It introduced us to two people. Like, sure, it looked worse because it was from, 1995.
Yep.
but it was a whole story, and it gave us the mission statement right away. Like, what's the mission statement with this? Is it just save Data's daughter, or one of
It
Data's?
it gives us the caretaker gives us the characters. It tries to set up what the is it Delta or Gamma Quadrant in Voyager? Delta Quadrant.
Hmm.
It gives us some world building. It gives us an idea of what the show will be, and then doesn't really do much with the potential afterwards. Whereas Picard doesn't. We get again. It's it's one of those we're told, we're not shown.
Yeah. And with Caretaker, you get characters interacting.
Yeah.
And we see some of our cast. It'll be the next episode where we're introduced to more of them, but yeah, there's just not
We get Daj, who gets killed off, and we get Soji, and then we get Jurati. Yeah, and then we get Dr. Jurati, who is the Tilly of this show, because I that just seems to be the kind of the thing we do in modern Star Trek, where we kind of have like the one female character who's a bit kooky.
Oh, Jurati is so much more annoying than Tilly.
We get Tilly, we get Jurati, and then we get like the nurse. We get Nurse Chapel in Strange New Worlds. We don't seem to have one in Lower Decks, because they're all kind of insane in Lower Decks. Maybe it's Jennifer. Jennifer, the Andorian girlfriend.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, worse than Caretaker. Is it better or worse than Broken Bow? Because Broken Bow does similar things.
It's better. It's better because at least I'm watching Patrick Stewart say stuff.
Okay.
There's it really, at this point, I think the difference between Broken Bow and Remembrance is which doggo do I like more.
Yeah, that's fair.
And while Porthos is a very good boy, number one is clearly an even better boy.
Okay, so it's better than Broken Bow. Is it better or worse than an evil clown being in the Matrix in the Thor?
Oh, I'm.
Because that's wacky. Like, that's some weird bullshit going on there.
I think it's kind of worth it for like the Thor is kind of worth it for like Janeway turning up at the end and just utterly destroying evil clown, like without breaking a digital sweat.
I'm good with that. Yeah, I think I'd prefer bad in a wacky way than just a bit maudlin and pointless feeling. Okay, so that'd put it at our new 35. Wow. Okay, and there will be some alright ones. Like, there are some episodes which are alright. There are at least a couple which might well be worse.
I haven't finished season 2
of
Picard. I might just go straight to season 3 and just kind of fill in the blanks with season 2 along the way.
I mean, if there's a clip on YouTube of the last couple of scenes set back in the future, that probably sets you up nicely, and the rest of it can be ignored. It's just a worse first contact.
Like, we got the TNG cast again. I've heard that it's good from like people who got to go to the premiere. So we'll see. Yeah, I don't feel good about having to, finally doing Picard and just going, yeah, I don't enjoy this.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be a rough one. So we've ripped the plaster off in the name of synergy. And yeah, who knows? We'll see what season 3 brings.
All right. So, on that note, where can they find you?
So they can find me at fakedtales.com, which is my blog. I will be promoting the Kickstarter for my comic once I get the Kickstarter page for it ready to launch. And yeah, hopefully on Who Dares Rolls, where I've submitted a couple of text reviews, having missed the era of text reviewing. And reading your blog posts has got me going, I miss doing blog posts, making some words. So hopefully there'll be some there. What about yourself?
Okay, well, I've actually started branching out. You can find me on my blog, which is M.A. Reed Lobato. That's ReidLobato.wordpress.com. There is a link in the show notes, or else I better be, or else your check's gonna bounce. I am also now doing Doctor Who based text reviews for Doctor Who. It's it's going to be like the reviews of mostly the books, the various books, and the various Big Finish audio books. Because I'll be honest, I have a gigantic backlog of Doctor Who related tat, and I need an excuse to get to it all. And I really should have. There we go. And you will find that on the website timeandrelative.uk. That's timeandrelative, all one word, .uk. I only have one review up there, which is for the Virgin 4th Doctor book, Menagra. Why, yes, that is an anagram of anagram. And yeah, more reviews will be coming up, when I have the energy to read and consume vast amounts of Doctor Who and write my opinions on it in ways which aren't long-form scrolls. You can still find me on Twitter at @manmiles. Although, let's be honest, any week where we can still say that Twitter is a thing is either a good thing or a bad thing. As I said, you can find me on the Breakfast in the Ruins podcast for the one episode, The Dark, which hopefully should be out when this episode airs. And there we go. I'm finally getting stuff out there, because I remember the early episodes of this podcast where you're like, yep, you can find me on my website, you can find me doing these things, and I'm just like, I'm on Twitter and occasionally I say the word penis, and that's funny.
Yeah, I've been, I don't know, channeling a lot more things through my blog a bit more. I'm on hiatus currently with Playing with Ourselves, my solo actual play podcast, and God knows with social media. So I've kind of walked it back a bit to anything relevant. It'll be on the blog. It's fine.
Yeah. Would you like to promote your MySpace page?
I keep
thinking, or maybe a Tumblr?
I'm Faked Tales on Tumblr. People keep following me, and I've posted literally nothing. So God knows what that's about.
And of course, we have our own Twitter, which is Casual Trek Pod at Casual Trek Pod on Twitter. It's really hard. Like, it's honestly good. We do have a Ko-fi. Send us money, and we will dance for your amusement. Not actually dance. We will metaphorically dance using episodes of Star Trek.
Yep. And
then there is our YouTube.
Yes, yeah, which is gradually getting everything from Casual Trek onto YouTube for anyone that wants a video for whatever reason, but not a podcast, and is fine with a static image. So yes, there are those. And Miles, what are we doing next time?
Next time, we are finally talking about the most important character in the history of Star Trek. No, it's not Bill Shatner. It's the guy who got more fan mail than Bill Shatner. We are finally talking about the one, the only, Mr. Spock himself.
So yeah, join us for some spectacular fun. Yeah.
Spectacular antics.
Yeah. I'm proud of that terrible pun. Yeah, so I guess with all of that done, it just remains for us to remind you, go to a Starfleet, just not the Starfleet from Picard's era, the Starfleet from before and distantly in the future from that.
So, live long and have a jelly baby.
You've been listening to Casual Trek by Charlie Etheridge Nunn and Miles Reed-Lobato. Music by Alfred Etheridge Nunn. Casual Trek's part of the Nerd and Tie network, and if you want to support us monetarily, because you love what we do that much, you can now do that by going to Ko-fi and looking up Casual Trek. There's a link in the show notes.